So, hi everyone. We're excited to have another Bethany Connect speaker series this evening. I'm Angie Beto. I'm president of the Bethany College Alumni Association, and on behalf of all of us on Alumni Council, thanks for joining us this evening and welcome. I hope you'll join us in future series. We are super excited tonight. I'm sure all of you came out to see our fabulous moderator tonight, Grant, but no, just kidding. We're very fortunate to have another extremely accomplished alum as our special guest this evening. And the council relishes the opportunity to talk with our accomplished alumni. And we hope that you will also find opportunities to connect and engage with fellow alumni and with students. We often have quite a few students join us while you're expanding your educational horizons. So without a lot of further ado, let's talk about a few housekeeping items before we get to our program tonight. Please, I know many of you have submitted questions already. We've had a lot come through as you registered. So if you have further questions this evening, put them in the chat. Hopefully we'll have some time. Evelyn has a lot of really fun stories to share. And so we're excited to hear about her journey from WVBC to ABC television. Who would have imagined, right? I'm sure she did not, and she'll tell you all about that. But anyway, before we start on that, I'd like to make sure that we recognize our Board of Trustees Chairman, Ken Beto, is on with us tonight. Ken, do you want to wave? Say hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome, Evelyn. Glad to hear your story. I know it, but I have probably more details than I don't know. And then afterwards, we're all going to play golf, right, Evelyn?
Absolutely.
Good luck with that. So, and our Vice President of Advancement and Marketing, Lori Weaver, is here.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.
And the Director of Alumni Relations, Dino Emily, is also here. And Dino, do you want to say hello?
Thanks, Angie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You're going to love this evening.
I get used to every time I call him and ask Siri, call Dino. Siri says, calling Dino Emily. So I always have to think for a second. Anyway, can't seem to get that right, but we are very excited again to have everyone here with us. So please remember, put your questions in the chat. We hope we'll have more time for some conversation at the end. And at this time, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, who's also a member of Alumni Council, Grant McLaughlin. Grant.
Thanks, Angie. I hope everybody brought their energy tonight, because I know our speaker did. So I'm going to have to match her energy tonight. Tonight's guest speaker is Evelyn del Cerro. And so I'm going to give a quick rundown on her bio. Evelyn has worked for WABC Television Disney since 1988, currently serving as the Director of Program Operations for WABC TV in New York City, where she oversees several aspects of production for locally produced programs and the nationally syndicated Live with Kelly and Ryan, now Kelly and Mark. Previously, she was the production supervisor and production manager for the World News Tonight with Peter Jennings from 1993 to 2003. And she served as a production assistant and production coordinator for Fairchild Publications, Capital Cities ABC from 1988 to 1993. Graduating from Bethany in 1985 with a BA in Communications and Broadcast Journalism, she received a graduate certificate in media management and an MA in media studies from the New School University in 2003. Among several honors, Evelyn received the DuPont Columbia University Award for Excellence in Broadcast Journalism and the George Foster Peabody Award, both for her role as production manager for ABC News coverage of 9/11 and the Answering Children's Questions special with Peter Jennings. She has also won 3 New York Emmy Awards with WABC for Protect Our Children franchise and 2 New York Emmy Awards for the breast cancer franchise, both with WABC TV. She is also the inaugural member of the Bethany College Communications Department Wall of Fame, of which there's more than one on this show tonight. Evelyn was the keynote speaker for the Bethany College John Caristia Lectures in Journalism Series in 2012, as well as the keynote speaker for the Fresh Air Fund's Friendly Town Conference in 2022. She's been a guest speaker and panelist for several communications classes at Bethany College. Evelyn was born and raised in New York City. You'll know that when you hear her, and currently resides in Westchester County, New York. She is an avid golfer and a member of the LPGA, Amateur Golf League Westchester chapter. She's been also a member of the New York City Board of Education Mentoring Program in partnership with the Walt Disney Company since 2016, and a Zeta Tau Alpha International Fraternity since 1982. So my great pleasure to bring Evelyn into the conversation tonight. And Evelyn, I'm just going to let you roll, and I will interject periodically, and hopefully we'll save 10, 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. I know you want to make this a conversation, so I think if people inject with a question into the chat or raise their hand through the process, I'll be sure to call on them.
Sounds great. Great. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Grant, for that introduction. Thank you, Angie, Bob Brosh, Dino, and Lori, for this invitation to speak to you all tonight. It's very exciting for me. As everybody knows, I just love Bethany. That's why I wore my Bethany green tonight. So basically, I'm just gonna make this try to make this as fun as possible. Tell you a little bit about my story, my journey through Bethany, and how my experiences there helped shape what's now a 35-year career in the media industry with one company. That's a really a lot of people don't do that. Anyway, whenever I'm asked where I went to college, the first thing people say to me is, "How did you end up in West Virginia?" Some of you may know me. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Manhattan. I moved to the Bronx when I was in 4th grade, and I went to a very large urban high school. As a matter of fact, I graduated high school with over 1,200 students in my graduating class. So when you think about it, that's more than the entire student body at Bethany at that time. Probably throw in the faculty and some of the townsfolk, and it probably is still less people. But I always knew that I wanted to go to college, and I knew that that I was going to be the first person in my family to attend college. So my thought process at the time was that I would attend a large urban university because, again, I'm from New York City. So knowing that my interest back then was that I wanted to work in radio, I decided that I was going to go to Syracuse University, and it just made sense until one day my college my high school softball coach, who's also our college counselor, she told all the seniors on the team that we had to attend a college fair at Lehman College later that week. So I told her, don't worry, I don't have to really go because I already know where I'm going. I'm going to go to Syracuse. And her response to me was, if you don't go, you don't play in the next game. So obviously I went to that college fair. I remember walking around the college fair and, not wanting to be there, typical teenager. And my eye caught this green tablecloth because, believe it or not, green is my favorite color. And I saw these beautiful pictures of Old Main. I mean, it just reminded me of like what a college should look like, just this quintessential college look, and there was a man standing by the table and he yelled out to me, "Hey, what are you interested in studying in college?" And I was like, "No, I'm good, man. I already know where I'm going. I have to be here." So he persisted and he said, "But what are you interested in studying?" So I told him that I wanted to work in radio, so probably communications, right? And I remember telling him, though, that the only thing I was disappointed about was that at a large university like Syracuse, I was told that as a freshman that I could only observe at the radio station. And that's when he replied to me, "Well, at Bethany, we have a radio station. And you don't even have to be a communications major. You just have to have the desire and the interest, and you can go down there. And by the time you're a sophomore, you could be running the place." So, of course, that piqued my interest. I took a couple of steps closer to the table, and we ended up having a nice chat. And I ended up leaving there with Bethany College brochure and a catalog. By the way, the only one that I took with me that day. So I remember going home and looking through this catalog and seeing these cool pictures of this beautiful school. And, I really liked the idea of small class sizes because, again, I went to a small class for me in high school was like 30 kids. So I decided that, maybe this might not be a bad thing, this might be kind of the place a place I could thrive in. So I thought to myself, I never considered going to a small school, especially one that was so far away. I mean, I had never been further west than New Jersey my entire life. So West Virginia was kind of a stretch for me, the other thing is, a few days later, I remember getting a letter from the softball coach saying, "Oh, we'd love to have you come to Bethany and play softball for us," And I thought to myself, Syracuse being a Division I school, there was no guarantee that I would make the team, let alone even get playing time. And, I really loved playing softball. So it was like another win-win for me. So after thinking about it, all of this, I told my mother, I said, "Ma, I think I'm going to apply to this school called Bethany College." And she's like, "The one in West Virginia?" I was like, "Yeah, that's the one." She's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I think so. I think this might work out for me, So the problem was that I didn't make this decision until very late, and I never had a chance to visit the campus. The first time I ever set foot on Bethany was the first day of freshman orientation. I remember being so excited to get to college. My mom drove me the 7+ hours, and we were on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I was sitting up in the front seat, like, "I'm going to college. It's going to be great," And then we got onto Route 88. So I think you all know where I'm going with this, right? I remember looking at my mother, and she was like white knuckled, holding the steering wheel. If my mother lived in New York her entire life, just navigating these twisty, turny roads, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my God, what the heck did I do? This is like really in the middle of nowhere, this place, So the next thing we did is we turned a left onto Route 67. And I remember we getting down to like where the Bethany church is. And my mother turned to me, she said, "You know what, Evelyn, before we get you set up in your dorm, why don't we drive through town so like where the downtown area is and where all the stores are?" You know where I'm going with this, right? So we drive down, we go over the little bridge there by the old soccer field, and we start seeing cows. And my mother turned to me and she said, "Evelyn, I think that was the town." I was like, "No, this can't be. This cannot be." But we make a U-turn and we go back, and I see some guy standing out of what now I know is Chambers. And I says to him, "Excuse me, you know where the downtown area is?" And he says to me, "You're looking at it." All right. I could see my mother's face. My mother was like, I remember she turned to me and she said to me, literally, "I hope you like it here, because I'm not coming back to graduation." But anyway, I'm trying to maintain a smile. I try to, not make this seem like as nervous as I was, So I remember going up to Phillips Hall, and there were a bunch of RAs there helping people unpack. And this one guy yelled out to me, he said, "So where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from the Bronx, New York." And he said, "Oh, you're the girl going to be living with the girl from Burbank, California." And I was amazed. I thought to myself, how do they already know all of this about me, And it's true. My roommate was from Burbank, California, and I think people thought we were going to kill each other by the end of the year. But she was the catcher on the softball team. I played second base, so we worked out. It worked out. We were very good friends, and we're still friends to this day. Actually, she pledged Phi Mu, I pledged Zeta, but everything worked out, and I was really glad that by the time I started to like really settle in, I realized that this place wasn't so bad. I mean, I had to get over that initial culture shock. And that wasn't easy. I mean, there were a couple of examples. One was just a quick story. I remember walking down freshman year to the cafeteria with a bunch of girls from the hall, and a rabbit ran right past me. And I literally almost jumped out of my sneakers. I was like, "What the heck is that?" And they were like, "Evelyn, calm down. It was just a bunny rabbit." It was and I was like, "Oh, but it ran right past me." And they were like, "Yeah, we have them here. It's okay. They're not going to hurt you." And then, of course, my freshman year was this year of the 17-year cicadas, which kind of made me think like something out of the 10 Commandments. Like this was a sign that I should not be here in the middle of nowhere. But as you know, it all worked out great. And I was really settled into things quite quickly. So the reason that I came here was because of that radio station, right? So I headed down to WVBC, and my first gig down there was engineering a show called Monday Night Oldies, and it was hosted by John Graham, who some of you may know, he used to be the treasurer at Bethany College. And now I knew nothing about doo-wop music. I mean, I thought I was a music aficionado, but I knew nothing about doo-wop music. But I was really determined to do whatever I had to do to work at WVBC. And I learned a lot from John. I really did. He was very knowledgeable on 50s music. And after a while, he started inviting me on, to talk during the show. And it started to become us co-hosting the show together. And I had a really great time. And just as a little side note, John and his wife, Linda, they used to invite me down to their house for dinner sometimes. And as somebody who was so far away from home, it was really nice to have a home cooked meal every now and then. And it just goes to show you like how special Bethany can be. But so soon after that, I got my own show, got an afternoon show at WVBC. It was great. And the cool thing about it back then is the radio station, for those of you who remember, used to be right across the hall from the bookstore. And on the other side of us was the admissions office. So there was a lot of activity, a lot of people coming and going. And we just had so much fun. We had that big glass window there. We're spinning records. I remember like cranking the dial up as loud as it could, so the walls were starting to vibrate. And it was a lot of fun. And then, but my best part, WVBC, was my show called The Magic Bus. There's me at the control board. Dug that picture up. It amazes me, the carts, in the background there, and the big old microphone. Amazing. But so I had a show called The Magic Bus, and it was a 60s rock and roll show. And the cool thing about it was that it had kind of a bit of a cult following at Bethany. There's my flyer that used to go out on the cafeteria tables, thanks to a fellow student, Pete Chevron, great artist. And the cool thing about my Magic Bus show was not only did a lot of the students at Bethany listen to it, but even some of the professors. I remember getting calls from Dr. Olshan, who was a sociology professor at the time, who loved his Bob Dylan. And Gail Thompson would call requesting music. And I thought to myself, this is so cool. Like, my professors are listening to my radio show, But what I wanted to do with that radio show is I didn't want to just spin records and just, introduce the artists. I wanted to make it special. I wanted my listeners to learn something listening to my show. So I did things like featured artists. I did family trees, where I would trace an artist from the different groups that he was in, or she was in. I highlighted events of the 60s because it was a 60s rock show. And the 60s was an amazing decade. I think I was born a decade too late. And I had a great time with that. I remember the guys up at the Overflow House every Wednesday night, they would all listen to the show and call in, and we had a great time. So the one thing I wanted to say is that the recruiter that told me about the radio station at Bethany, he was right. They did have a radio station. But what he neglected to tell me was that it was a 10-watt radio station. Right. So that meant like once you got past like the Gresham House, you could barely get the signal anymore. We used to joke that it was like more like a campus PA system than it was a radio station. But the good thing is that my senior year, I was given the opportunity to become the student manager of the radio station. And by the generous donation of an alum, we got a wattage increase to 1,500 watts. Now, the students of Bethany today, they're really lucky. They're broadcasting over the internet. They've got a worldwide audience. But let me tell you something. Back in 1984, we were pretty damn excited to have people calling from like Steubenville, Ohio, and Washington, PA. We thought that was like, the best thing ever. And we took our business seriously there. I remember being so excited to get my FCC license in the mail. And I learned a lot, at that time, not realizing all of the skills that I was learning there and how they were going to help me in my career later on down the road. We had live people sitting in the chairs 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. And then we would sign off and sign back on the next day. So there was a lot of scheduling. there was a lot of working, through all of the businesses of, running a radio station. I remember when we got that wattage increase, we put on a 52-hour music marathon, and I have to give a shout out to, at the time, my news director, Hal Newman, and our music director was Matt Mastrangelo. And we really did a lot of work to make that run like a pro machine. And I was really excited to be a part of it. Learning how to manage people, learning how to schedule, learning all the business that was involved in getting us on the air 7 days a week. And the cool thing, a little bit of I don't know, Laura, if you have that slide from the tower. But we got a front page article in the Tower newspaper. Yeah, there's me with those big 80s glasses that took up about 3/4 of my face. But we were really excited about that. And this is a little bit of trivia for some of you who might not know this, but I was lucky enough to introduce our new audience to the new WVBC. And the first song that we played was the first song that was ever played on WVBC when it was first opened up as a radio station at Bethany, and that was "The Sounds of Silence" by Simon and Garfunkel. So if you're ever at a Bethany trivia place and that's the question, you'll now you'll know the answer. But like I said, I really learned a lot, and I took a lot of those skills with me once I started to get into my career. Believe it or not, one of the other experiences from Bethany that really helped me was senior comprehensive exams. When I tell people from New York that I had to take a 3-day test in every class in my major, my senior year, in order to graduate, like their mouths fall open. They can't believe it. And sometimes I can't even believe it. I don't know how every school doesn't do that, because, as you all know, all of you who are Bethany grads, there's no way you can leave that place without learning, without knowing, without being an expert in your field. I felt after comps, I could sit down with anybody and talk about the theories of mass communications, and just the whole preparation, during orals, it's that basically, if you think about it, that was a practice run for your first job interview. Without the, anxiety of wondering if you were going to graduate while you were standing out in the hallway and they were discussing your fate. But those things, really prepared me. And when I look back now, I realized that I did make the right choice. I don't think I would have gotten any of those experiences, at a big school like Syracuse or any other large university. And that's, to me, really what makes Bethany unique. I don't know, Grant, do you have any? I mean, I can talk about now. I'm just going to talk about starting my career search, but I don't know if you had anything you wanted to.
I'd just be curious to see what would you tell your 18-year-old self, right? What would you want to know? Like, going back to that period of time, 35 years later, what would you have wished for? What would you have wished to have known?
A lot. Okay. A lot. I think back, all of us, I'm sure, when we were 18, 19, 20, we thought we knew everything, right? We thought we knew more than our parents, but we didn't. And I'll go into a little bit of that later on. But so I think what I would have told myself is to be open and listen to people, take advice. Don't think you know everything, because I'll admit, I was from New York. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder as a young kid.
Oh, say so.
I have since become much humble, but I did. I thought I knew it all, and I would definitely tell myself to be open and listen more. People who have come after you, they know a lot more than you do. And I learned that along the way. So definitely that. Listen, important. But anyway, so I'll just continue on. After graduation, I headed back to my hometown. A lot of people told me, oh, if you want to work in media, you got to go to a little market, and then you've got to get experience, and then you got to go home, go to the larger markets. And I thought to myself, I'm from New York. I'm going home. Like, I'm going to make it or break it, And, you have to remember too, back then, there was no cable TV, there was no, satellite radio. So the choices were very, very limited. I remember writing letters to like 3 television stations, ABC, CBS, NBC, and a handful of radio stations, and getting back the same letter from all of them, and it was the same letter. It was like this standard letter. It was 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph was, thank you for your interest in our company, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, your skill sets do not match any of our positions, yada, yada, yada. Good luck in your job search, yada, yada, yada. And I remember keeping those letters, as like a motivation. So people always tell me, oh, when you got home, like, did you get a job right away? And the answer is unequivocally, no, I didn't. I spent a couple of years lifeguarding, teaching swimming lessons, working at a commercial photography lab because, I had to pay those student loans. I financed my education on my own. And Bethany wasn't the cheapest school. That was another reason why my mother thought I was crazy for going there, because I could have went to state school for a lot less money. But I really wanted the experience of going away to college. It was something that I had always dreamed of my whole life. So I remember, today kids that are job searching, you type in some parameters and Indeed or, some job website, and boom, all these jobs pop up and you get to search and look. Well, in 1985, my job search consisted of buying the Sunday New York Times classified section and scouring through like 1/2-inch ads that were alphabetical by they weren't even sorted by like industry. They were just sorted by like the name of the job. And, that was not an easy thing. You had to write a letter, you had to put your resume, you had to put a stamp on it, go to the mailbox, all of that stuff. It was not like it is today. So it took a while. I couldn't find anything. And then I remember my mom coming to me and she said, Evelyn, I found this job in the classified section. It's as a production assistant at Fairchild Publications. And I remember telling my mom, well, thanks, Mom, but I don't want to work in publishing. I want to work in radio or television. And she said, yeah, but Evelyn, on the bottom, it says an ABC owned company. So maybe if you get the job there, it'll be easier for you to move around. And of course, going back to that, I know everything. I thought that was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. And, but, student loans were still coming due. So I decided to apply for the job and I got that job. And so my first job at ABC was in the publishing division, working for a daily newspaper called Women's Wear Daily, which was sort of like the Bible for the fashion industry. And any of you who know me then, or my friends who know me now, know that I have zero fashion sense. But thank God I wasn't working in content. I was working in production. So I put together all of the layouts for the ads and did all of the blueprints to send to the printing plant for this daily newspaper. And in the meanwhile, while I was there, I realized that my mother wasn't so dumb, because every day, every week in the lobby was a sheet of internal job listings for all of the ABC entities. And I would go down and I would look at jobs and apply for jobs. And it took a while, but finally I got an interview for a job. It said transport coordinator for World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. And being a news junkie myself, that's my very first press pass. Well, actually, I had one before that, but I have it framed someplace else. But yeah, that's one of the earlier ones. So I had no idea what a transport coordinator meant. I didn't know, but it said entry level. So I just said, let me apply for this job. And I remember going to the interview, I was scared to death because I thought to myself, I'm coming from publishing. This is television. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what this job is. I'm going to have to like BS my way through this interview somehow and just sort of charm this guy to death and make him want to hire me. I got really lucky because the guy that interviewed me was awesome. We got along great. It was more like a conversation than an interview. We started talking. I started making up things about, I learned all of these skills and I can bring them here. And, I learned things like these core skills, that I talked about, like, logistics and time management and problem solving, which they were all true. But still, I had no idea what a transport coordinator was. So somehow, I remember also seeing on his desk, which is, it's a shame now that most kids are doing interviews over Zoom, because I remember seeing behind him on a shelf behind his desk, he had a New York Mets baseball. And being a Met fan, I started talking about the Mets, and the conversation sort of like rolled, and all of a sudden we were laughing like we'd been friends forever, and it ended up being lucky for me, because I got the call and he told me that I got the job. And so that was pretty awesome. I remember basically him telling me, okay, let me explain to you what this job is now, and it was kind of exactly all the things that I thought, that I could handle, the things that I kind of what I had done at Fairchild. I was responsible for coordinating all of our news couriers, as well as equipment and tape shipments from all of our bureaus all over the world. And we were the ones that did all the legwork when all the big stories happened. So I was right there, like in the middle of everything. And so a cool part about this is I show up on my first day of work, and the guy meets me there by the elevator, and he says, okay, I'm going to bring you to your desk. So we walk down the hall, and I see ABC Newsroom. He opens the door, and we walk into the network newsroom. And I couldn't even contain myself. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. There's Peter Jennings' desk. There's all these monitors. And if you look right over his shoulder, that was where I sat, right over his right shoulder. I sat there every night during the 6:30 World News Tonight broadcast. So if any of my friends wanted to know where I was at 6:30 on a weekday, all they had to do was turn on the ABC station and they would see me in the background. So I couldn't believe my luck. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This couldn't get any better. So I did that for a couple of years, and the hard part about that job was, as a new person, I did the night shift. So most of my friends were, out or hanging out after work, and I was working. And when they were at work, I was home sleeping or waking up, and I was in my 20s. So of course it wasn't an ideal time not to be able to hang out with friends and do things, but those are the things that you sacrifice. And when you work in news, I tell people a lot of times, especially interns that I mentor, that, if you want a career in news, it's a lifestyle. Okay. I worked every weekend. I worked every holiday. I worked night shifts, overnight shifts. It's not the easiest thing. And, a lot of people don't stick with it, but, eventually if you do, you end up getting the better shifts. And that's exactly what happened to me. Down the road, I got promoted to an E&G production manager. And so if you guys don't know what E&G stands for, that's electronic news gathering. And those are all of the handheld camera crews that go out and cover news events outside of the studio. And so it was weird because, for me, there weren't a lot of women in the newsroom at that time. And there certainly weren't a lot of women of color or even people of color. So there was a big adjustment for me. But I was kind of used to it. By the time I went to Bethany at that time, there weren't a lot of people of color at Bethany in the early 80s, unless they were foreign exchange students. So I was kind of used to blending in and, making people feel that I was competent to do the job. I was also supervising a lot of older men, especially the couriers. I mean, some of these guys were old enough to be my grandfather. And here I was, this 30-year-old woman telling them what to do, and, I learned, the biggest thing I learned there was how to pick and choose your battles, especially with those guys, because they were union employees, and a lot of them, they didn't want to hear it. So I had a lot of tough moments, but, I tried to use my personality, and I tried to try to let them know that, listen, I can work with you if you work with me. And in the long run, that all worked out for me. Working for World News Tonight, though, was a great experience. We not only worked for the station, but I also worked as support staff for Good Morning America, also for Nightline and the now defunct 2020 with Barbara Walters, and Primetime Live that was hosted by Diane Sawyer and Sam Donaldson. So every day was exciting there. I mean, I worked on every major news story that you could imagine during that time. And just to give you like a quick rundown of some of the stories that I was involved in. It was the O.J. Simpson trial. It was the death of President Nixon, the Oklahoma City bombing, the crash of TWA Flight 800, the deaths of Princess Diana and John F. Kennedy Jr., what we now know as the first high school mass shooting at Columbine, the bombing at the Atlanta Summer Olympics, the 1996 and 2000 presidential elections, and of course, the biggest story of all, the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11. So if you don't mind, I would like to talk a little bit about what happened that day. It was, like I said, the biggest story in broadcast news history. That day, it was the mayoral primary in New York City. So we knew it was going to be relatively busy. We didn't know how busy. And you have to remember too, this was before social media and with online news in its infancy. The story of 9/11 really unfolded on television. The iPhone hadn't been invented yet, right? I think it was about 4 or 5 years later. And people who did have cell phones, they didn't have the capability of videotaping. Some of them had phone pictures, cameras, but really not a lot. So most of the stuff that we saw on 9/11 was through news footage. So what I remember about that day, the biggest thing was it was a beautiful blue sky that day. I got to the newsroom about 8:45 in the morning. When I entered the newsroom, I knew something big was happening, because the way I could tell when a big news story happened was all of the assignment editors would be standing up and they would have a phone in each ear. And we always knew that meant like, get camera crews ready because something big was happening. And I remember my colleague who was on the 6 to 2 a.m. shift, he said to me, Evelyn, there's a fire in the World Trade Center. And, you know, any fire in the World Trade Center was going to be a big story. So we started mobilizing all of our staff crews. We had 8 staff crews at the time. We started getting all of those guys ready. We started calling in freelance crews. You know, we had to get them before NBC, sorry, JP, I see you're on the call, before CBS, because, you know, we had to get as many people as possible because this was going to be a big, big, big story. You know, all the while we're watching this incredible footage. CNN had footage, and also our station, the station that I actually work for now, WABC's traffic helicopter, they were showing footage of what was going on in the World Trade Center. On Good Morning America, we were lucky that we had 2 amazing seasoned veterans, news journalists there anchoring Good Morning America, Charlie Gibson and Diane Sawyer. And they started reporting the events of what was going on that day. We also had a correspondent named Dan Daler, who lived about 5 blocks from the World Trade Center. And we were able to patch him through on a landline. And he was giving us like an account of what was happening from his vantage point, from his apartment building. I remember Peter Jennings getting to the studio just after 9 a.m. And he took over at the anchor desk of World News Tonight. And, you know, once we saw the second plane hit the second tower, we knew that this wasn't an accident. You know, the whole time we kept thinking, oh, maybe somebody had a heart attack on a pilot and this was some sort of an accident. But we knew right then and there that this was serious business. This was an attack by somebody on our country. The whole time we're continuing to call in camera crews. You know, I mean, the newsroom was on warp speed. You know, I remember looking around and seeing like seasoned veteran news people that were just like walking around in shock, but still getting the job done, you know. Just over an hour after that all started, we watched the unimaginable, as many of you I'm sure did, as both the towers collapsed. You know, one of the things that we had to grapple with was what footage were we going to show? What video were we going to show and not show? You know, we had video of people jumping from the towers. I remember ABC News president David Weston at the time, he made the decision that we weren't going to show that footage. You know, there were these people had families, you know, and we reported the fact that this was happening, but we didn't feel that it was appropriate to show that footage. And I was always proud of that decision that was made by my network not to show that video. So what we did was we divided it into two teams. We had one team that would be in the control room. The other team was in a very large conference room and gathering information and video. And we would rotate these teams like every hour so that we would ensure that we had a continuous stream of like fresh information. You know, Peter Jennings stayed on the air live for 17 consecutive hours. And ABC News, along with the other networks, aired almost 100 continuous hours of coverage. It's never been done before, and it's never been done since. It was, in fact, the longest uninterrupted news event in U.S. history. We all programming, all commercials were preempted. It was literally unprecedented. I left the newsroom that day at 2 a.m. and I returned at 7 a.m. the next day. I worked 16-hour days until Sunday, September 16th. I really didn't process the event until I woke up that Sunday at home. You know, it was like, I don't know if any of you ever had this feeling, like sometimes something happens and you wake up and you're like, did that really just happen? Or was that like some crazy dream I had, you know? And I remember waking up and I turned on the TV and there it was. It was still being reported on the air. You know, the Twin Towers, they were part of my landscape. As someone who grew up in Lower Manhattan, I could see them from my grandmother's window, from her kitchen. You know, they were completed when I was about 10 years old. I remember too, like when I would return home from Bethany, you know, after the long drive from Bethany, I would be on the Jersey Turnpike and I would see those towers and I would think, oh God, I'm almost home. You know, they were part of my life. So, you know, I think it took me that time after, you know, during the whole time, I was just so focused on working and working. When I finally got home, I think that's when it really hit me. And I remember sitting on the couch and I just broke out in tears. You know, one of the most vivid memories too that I had from those was in the days after. Buildings in Manhattan, they were just covered with photographs of people that were missing, thousands and thousands of photographs. It was just surreal. But anyway, you know, it was a tragic day. I was proud to be a part of reporting the events of that day. You know, I felt proud that we were awarded two of the highest awards in journalism, the DuPont and the Peabody Award for our coverage. We also did a program called Answering Children's Questions, which was another program I was extremely proud of being a part of. Peter Jennings did a show on how to talk to children about what happened on 9/11, because, you know, none of us had ever expected something like this. You know, shortly after 9/11, you know, it was weird because, you know, whenever there was a big news event, like a plane crash or any of those stories that I mentioned to you, you know, we would work like these crazy hours. We would work like 16 hours and, you know, 6 days a week. But then things would go back to normal, you know, and we would wait for the next big story. But after 9/11, things didn't go back to normal. Things stayed that way, you know, and then when the war broke out in March, it just continued. And I had just started graduate school the year before. I went back, not right after college. I went back about 15 years later because this crazy thing had been invented that I thought might affect my industry. It's called the internet. And I, for some reason, thought maybe it might have some impact on what I was doing and I better get on board or get left behind. So I was juggling school and working. And luckily I had a colleague who worked next door at WABC, our local flagship station. And he told me about a position that was there, that was available. That was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And he said, Evelyn, I think you'll be perfect for this job. So I decided to leave World News, and it was a hard decision. It was a difficult decision for me because I really loved it. I loved the adrenaline of it. I loved being in the middle of everything. It was just so exciting. But you know, maybe if I was about 10 years younger, I might have stuck it out a little longer. But I was getting a little long in the tooth, and it was a tough road to hoe. So I started my next chapter at ABC in 2003, actually on my 40th birthday. I started the job as program operations manager for WABC. And another funny story is when I showed up for my first day of work there, my boss met me and brought me in, and he said, "Here's your office." And I was excited. I have an office now with a couch and some TVs, and and my office was literally right next door to Regis Philbin. And I thought to myself, this is like incredible. There's like 6 stories in this building. It's a huge, huge office building. And my office is right next to Regis Philbin. So that was really cool. And my job there basically has evolved a lot. But just to give you a quick overview, I oversee, as Grant said, I oversee all of our local and syndicated non-news programming. Yeah, that was me with Regis. That was actually at his farewell party that we had at the station. I was also really lucky to be invited to his final show. It was an invitation only event, and it was like filled with celebrities, and it was really a cool experience. So there, I also oversee our music rights and licensing with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So I basically negotiate all of our contracts, and anybody who wants to use music for the station, I just make sure that the music is cleared, and then we have the permission to use the music. I also deal with our license renewal, all of our FCC compliance for the station. So I work a lot with our station lawyers. So it's a lot different from what I was doing at World News Tonight, but it's just as challenging, and I love it. I also oversee, because we produced the live show when I first got there. It was live with Regis and Kelly, and then it became live with Kelly and Michael. There's me and Kelly Ripa. She's amazing too, by the way. So then it became live with Michael Strahan. And that's actually, this is a very cool picture. If you look closely, I am holding his Hall of Fame ring and his Super Bowl ring. And I'll just a quick story about Michael, because he's so special to me. When I've been a Giants fan since I was old enough to watch football. And my favorite player at the time was Mark Bavaro, who I loved. He was a wide receiver for the Giants. And when he retired, I was so upset. And I was like, who's going to be my favorite player now? And luckily, the Giants drafted this young kid named Michael Strahan. And I fell in love with Michael Strahan. I had his jersey. I would wear it every Sunday watching the games. And so he was like my all-time favorite player. So I remember getting the news from my boss that Michael Strahan was going to be the new host of Live with Kelly and Michael. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is like a dream come true. And I remember the first week, I didn't even want to talk to him or meet him, because I was afraid I was going to look like some crazy lunatic fan. So I avoided him for an entire week. And in my office, I had a whole bunch of pictures of Eli Manning and the Super Bowl, and a picture of him and Phil Simms. And one day he walked by my office, because his office was right across the hall from me. And he looked in and he says, "So, are you a Giants fan?" And I remember sitting there, I was like, I couldn't even talk. I was like, yeah. And he ended up walking into my office, sitting on the couch, and we talked about the Giants, and we had such an amazing relationship. Like every Monday he would come into work and we'd be like, "Did you see that game this weekend?" And it was just amazing. He is just like Regis. Those two are exactly the person that you've seen on television. They are exactly that way in real life. And it's so refreshing. It really is. But like I said, I've had a great ride. Because I handle the music licensing there, I've met so many celebrities and musicians that have been on the show. I've had so many great opportunities. And I couldn't be more grateful. I don't know if Lori, we have a couple of there's James Taylor, amazing person. That's backstage at the show. There's I think we have do we have one more Santana, I think Melissa Etheridge. Yeah, Melissa. She's actually been on the show about 3 times, so she already knows me now. She knows I'm a crazy fan of hers. And she's fantastic. Carlos Santana. I almost passed out when I met Carlos Santana. It was the first concert I ever went to. My mother took me to see Santana when I was 15 years old. So I've been in love with him my whole life. But anyway, like I said, I've had a great ride. And I couldn't be more blessed, lucky, right place, right time. A lot of it was hard work, never giving up. Thinking I would never get a job in my field because I just kept getting said no to so many times. But I think what I learned about that was if you give up, there's a saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. You've just got to keep going. So I don't know.
I mean,
Grant,
thank
you
you.
wanna-
Thank you for sharing your story. Really exciting and energizing, and uh, darn right entertaining,
I don't
right?
see anybody sleeping, so that's a good sign.
We've got about 10 minutes left, and I would just encourage people, if they haven't thought of a question, take the time to think of one now. But I'll kick this off as, you obviously love what you do, right? So what do you love most about the TV business? What are the things you maybe you don't? And then what's the most fun aspect of your job?
Well, the thing that I love the most about my job and the industry in a whole is that it's like I have a lot of interns. When I would interview interns on intern night, they would be like, "Tell me what a typical day is like." And the thing is, there is no typical day. Like, that's what I love. Like, I never know what's going to happen. When I worked at ABC News, I never knew what was going to happen. I would go to work and it would be like, anything could happen. A plane could fall out of the sky. Anything could happen. Even now, it's a live show, live with Kelly. The live show is live, so anything can happen. And I think that just fuels me, so that definitely is what I love the most. It's not like I go to work and I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen today. I never know what's going to happen today. And that to me is awesome. What was the other question? What was the most fun about my job?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say everything. I just, I work with some amazing professionals, some amazing people. They're not only amazing professionals at what they do, but they're just amazing human beings. And I'm so lucky, I know so many people that are like, oh my God, I hate this guy. I hate that guy at my job. I can't say that about like anybody at my job. I mean, it's just an amazing group of people. So I'm so lucky and blessed for that. It sounds like a cliche, but it really, I mean, I love my job. I love it.
Awesome. That's awesome. There's a question here from Peggy Hoffman in the chat. When you first got to Bethany, how did you see the future you? What did you think you were going to do?
Oh my God. I had no idea. I mean, like I said, I wanted to work in radio. I wanted to be a DJ. I thought that, I'd be some rock and roll DJ, spinning tunes on like the best rock station in New York. But I actually found out like later on that at that time there was no money in radio. Like, you weren't going to make any money in radio. So I'm kind of glad I didn't go down that path, but who knows? I mean, I might have been good at it. I did love doing my radio show. But I saw Judy Collins for WNEW, rock on. Yes, that was one of the best. That was like my dream job. So that's what I thought I would do. But, I had no idea. I mean, I was like a crazy kid back then. I would have done anything really at that point, especially once my student loans first started coming due.
Excellent. You talked a lot about the various different experiences you had, whether, major milestones in news media, et cetera. Lisa asked a question: did you keep a personal journal about these events in the news and personal perspective throughout your time?
I didn't keep a personal journal, but I did keep, and I think maybe Lori might have those pictures in my office. I have several of these. This is just a couple of them. I created these collages of my press credentials and press passes and from different events that I did. And people, when they come in my office, like a lot of times people, I've about 4 of them. I think I just gave you shots of 2, but these were a lot of the stories that I covered. And so that's basically what I did, sort of like a collage of events. But I wish I had made a journal of it, because I probably could write a book. That's the other one there. different, the Republican convention, college football, the elections, specials that we did. That was a WNBA All-Star game there, I think. Some press passes that were issued by the New York Police Department. So that's what I did instead.
Excellent. There's a couple of questions here. Like, what high school in the Bronx did you go to?
I went to John F. Kennedy High School, and we were the Kennedy Knights. And I was captain of my softball team. I played basketball, and unfortunately, I was too short for basketball. I also played behind a girl named Rhonda Wyndham, who went on to win 3 national championships at USC and is now the vice president of basketball operations for the WNBA LA Sparks. So that's why I never got to play.
Awesome. All right, so we're almost at the top of the hour, and I get the benefit of having the last question. So, what's your best memory of Bethany?
Oh God. Like, can we start over at 8 o'clock, at 7 o'clock? I have so many, but I guess, I think my best memory of Bethany is just, oh my God, the whole experience, my radio show, that's really hard. I think probably my proudest moment was welcoming the new audience to the new WVBC, when we got our power increase. That's something that I look back at with a lot of pride, and I remember that day like vividly.
That's awesome. So, Ev, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I hope you take a moment to read the thoughtful in the chat. People have taken the time to actually talk about you. So take the time to read that, because it's great. Right. And
I will definitely.
Thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's great to see all these great familiar faces. I hope you found something interesting, some interesting nugget here. I had a great time. Thank you so much, Angie and Bob, for this invitation. I really, really appreciate it.
Evelyn, It was a joy to listen to you tonight. Everything was amazing. Just terrific. Thank you for an informative evening.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. When I first met Jeffrey at a alumni event, can I tell the story, Jeffrey?
Sure.
I walked up to him. He had a name tag. It said Jeff Halbrecht, class of 1963. And I walked up to him, and I think I had a couple of glasses of wine before that. But I said, 1963, that's the year I was born. And he said, that's a nice way to make a guy feel great, Evelyn. Thank you very much. But we've become good friends now, right? We
have.
I get a Christmas
Absolutely.
card every year from my friend Jeff. And that's another great thing about Bethany, why I love it so much. It's again, I would have never got this experience and met these kind of people at some large university. I might have walked away with about 2 or 3 good friends, but this is why I love where I went to school.
That's awesome. Thank you.
It has been our pleasure to have you, Evelyn. So thank you so much for giving your time.
Thank you.
And as we wrap this up tonight, I'd like to thank Bob Brosh for the work on the Bethany Connect series. And if any of you have any suggestions for future speakers, we definitely want to hear from you. Please send your feedback and any comments to Angie at abeto@bethanywv.edu. And then finally, if you have time in your agenda, it is not too late to register for the annual Women and Leadership Weekend this coming weekend at Bethany. This year's theme is Be Courageous, and it's on Friday, April 22nd and Friday, April 21st and 22nd. For more details, check out the website. And so thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Ev, thank you for sharing your story. And
Thank you.
Look forward to the next one. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, Evelyn.
Good night. Thank you, guys.